I'm Nathan Lusk with Warrior with a Pen Games, and today we're going to talk about Huang, a Three Kingdoms role-playing game. I developed this several years ago, and it is a way for you and your friends to put yourselves into ancient China and become characters in one of the greatest stories in the history of the world, which is based on the novel by Luo Guanzhang, called Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It was a tumultuous period. The emperor of China has been deposed. Dong Zhuo, who was the emperor's right-hand man and the leader of the imperial guard, deposed the emperor and set himself up to control a puppet emperor that he put on the throne, a small child that was a member of the imperial line. And the beginning of the story is just after all of that happens. The Yellow Turbans have been thwarted for a little while. That was a large rebellion by a religious zealot that got a lot of the common people and some of the warrior class into a rebellion. That got quelled by Dong Zhuo and several other warlords. And then that's when Dong Zhuo wrested power from the emperor and set himself up as the power behind the throne. And so now, at the beginning of the time period of the role-playing game, there is an alliance, a coalition of warlords getting ready to form to go fight Dong Zhuo and try to take the capital back from him and rescue the imperial line and try to set everything right. Now, that does not mean that you and your friends have to make characters to try to thwart Dong Zhuo. It is a role-playing game. You can do whatever you want, but that scenario is certainly one of the scenarios available to players in the game. And you could join Dong Zhuo's team and become an evil dick and help to keep him cemented in power and hope that you get rewards for it. Or you could join the coalition against him, or you could avoid that combat altogether. You do not have to take part in something you don't necessarily want to, although most of the, let's say, classes that are available in Huang, a Three Kingdoms role-playing game, are military-oriented. But that doesn't mean you have to use your character, of course, to do something like that. So, with all that said, this is a game where you have the freedom to do as you please. You also have the freedom to build your character as you please, even if your character is not going to be in the military class. There are plenty of options, tons of different things you can do. And the customization of characters is very unique in Huang. Then there are a few special details that you'll never see in another role-playing game, or at least I've never seen in another role-playing game. For starters, if you ever max out a die, any die that you're rolling for any reason, you keep that maxed out die, and then you're allowed to roll it again and add that to it. So most actions are accomplished by rolling two 20-sided dice, and then you'll generally add bonuses from your attributes and or bonuses from certain skills to that roll to see if you were successful or not in that particular whatever it is you're trying to do. However, if you max out one or both of these dice, so for instance, if this was my roll, 20 plus 10, then that 20 stays, but I get to pick that one up and roll it again. And so now it's a 28 plus 10 is 38. And now I add whatever bonuses I would get either from attributes and or skills. And that completes my roll. Because of the ability to keep and then re-roll a die that maxes itself out, it is wholly possible to do nearly anything in Huang. A lesser skilled warrior can overcome a more skilled warrior with a little bit of luck on his side and some really good dice. The other possibilities, of course, when rolling dice or when you're rolling for damage or rolling to evade an attack, rolling to jump off a cliff and survive the fall. There are lots of different things you could roll for, and the ability to max out a die and keep rolling it really adds to the heroic actions your characters are able to take. So when you're building a character in Huang, you first start, here's the rule book right here that helps you go through all of that. I have a little intro story at front, and then it begins to talk about the different character classes. But first, let's talk about the character attributes. Those attributes are power, speed, aggression, willpower, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and mandate. And I want to explain to you exactly what all of those mean. I know you know most of them, but recognize this. All of your characters' attributes begin as a 5. Cinco, 5. The maximum that an attribute can reach without any modification from equipment or anything like that is 100. So a scale from 5 to 100 leaves a lot of depth of ability in there between the people at the very top and the people at the bottom. More importantly, in this world, there are only allowed to be one of each different attribute. One person can only have each attribute between 96 and 100. In other words, there are only 5 people who have a power of between 96 and 100. There's one at 96, one at 97, one at 98, one at 99, and one at 100. And that's true for all 8 attributes: power, speed, aggression, willpower, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and mandate. Only one at each of those levels between 96 and 100. Now, there are a few people who could have more than one of those attributes between 96 and 100, but they would be the only person then at the particular levels they're at in those 2 attributes or 3 attributes or however that goes through. So here are the attributes. Power is how physically strong your character is. You normally, depending on your martial art, receive a damage bonus based on your power. And it'll also help you, of course, lift heavy objects and that kind of thing. Speed, this is the measure of your character's physical coordination and speed. It affects your odds of hitting an opponent in most cases and your ability to keep them from hitting you. It is your hand-eye coordination as well as your physical moving speed, such as running and things like that. Then there's aggression. This is the measure of your character's reaction time and twitch muscle power. So it's a twofer. There's a bit of power involved as well as your reaction time. You might consider it to be burst potential. It usually modifies your initiative. In most martial arts, your aggression determines your initiative, which of course is the order of turns in combat. And in some martial arts, it also affects how hard you hit, because being aggressive can add damage to an attack. Then there's willpower. It's the measure of your character's physical health and stamina, as well as your mental fortitude to keep driving toward a goal under pressure. It's no coincidence that a lot of people with the most durable bodies also have the most durable minds. A lot of the durability of our bodies is because of how tough our minds are. So willpower measures both of those. It gives you a bonus to your hit points. And of course, that's how much damage you can take before you're unconscious or dead. Then there's intelligence, which is the measure of your mental power, aptitude, or logic. Provides a bonus when you're trying to outsmart an opponent, either in battlefield strategies, debate, or myriad other things that you might be contesting someone mentally with. Then there's wisdom. This is a measure of your character's general knowledge and your base instincts. While intelligence measures your applied brain power towards, say, solving a problem or winning a board game or figuring out what formation it is you're seeing and what formation would counter it. Wisdom tends to measure the basic knowledge aspects of survival and what we would consider street smarts. Wisdom is gained generally through experience. Then we have charisma. Charisma is the measure of your character's ability to be liked by others and control outcomes in social interactions. To convince someone to ally with your army, to join forces, or to surrender their aims to you often makes you stronger without bloodshed. Charisma is in a way, can be used as a way to avoid combat and win anyway. And then the last one is mandate. This is, I've never seen it as an attribute in a role-playing game. Mandate is the measure of your character's fame and prestige, but it's not an internal characteristic. It is an external characteristic. After you've created your initial character, you never can consciously add to your mandate. You do not raise it on your own after your character is made. But it can go up on its own as you go forward through the world. Characters with high mandate attract followers, both simple admirers and fellow heroes who share similar ambitions. So, I mentioned before, you start with a 5 in every attribute, and then you're given 90 points plus a 10-sided die, so whatever you roll on this, to spend on your character and add points to those attributes and or skills. You also buy advantages and disadvantages to your character. Advantages cost you points and generally give you some sort of bonus. Disadvantages give you points back to spend somewhere else on your character, but tend to give you a weakness within your character. But remember, even in character creation, if you max out this die, you get to keep the 10 and keep going. So you have your 90 points, you roll the die and say it comes up with a 10. Now you have 100 plus another roll of the die. I have 108 character points now to spend on my character, which is going to leave you in having some pretty good points to go with. So once you want to start considering looking at your points, I can tell you what the bonuses on each do. There is a chart that tells you what certain scores do for certain attributes and what kind of bonuses are given based on the scores in those. So for instance, in speed, if you end up with a speed of say 70, then you'll get 19 bonus to your armor value, which is what other people have to hit above to hit you, and to your ability to hit past their armor. So when you're trying to hit somebody, you typically roll 2 20s. I rolled a 9 and a 14, that's 23. And if my speed is a 70, it means I get 19 bonus points to this, which makes my total of 42. As long as my opponent's armor is a 41 or less, I just hit him with that roll because of my good speed. Yep. So now we're going to move on to classes. And the classes that you can begin with are not the only classes in the game. They're just where you begin the game. And those classes are Warrior, who's an all-around battlefield specialist. They're the backbone of armies in China. Warriors are the grunts, the soldiers, and even many of the generals that you face if you're in a battle in China. Now, they do have some small skirmish and dueling capability, mostly because they are tougher and typically stronger than their opponents. So they are not someone to scoff at short of a pitched battle. But during a pitched battle, they are far scarier than most other classes. They get a lot of bonuses in pitched battle, and their toughness and their strength do weigh in even more in a pitched battle than any other class. So they're really good. Most mercenaries and conscripts are warriors, and among those battling in China, warriors make up over 80% of the people participating in war. They're tough, they're strong, they're heavily armed and armored. Warriors use a wide variety of tools in combat. They're kind of the catch-all of the fighting classes. They're allowed to use any weapon, wear any armor, They receive additional damage bonuses from having a high power score, and they can shrug off damage if they have a high willpower score. You heard that correctly. If a warrior has a really high or just a decently high willpower, every time he gets hit, there's a certain amount of that damage that the warrior simply doesn't take. He shrugs it off. So their toughness is legendary, particularly at the higher willpower scores. Then there are fighters. Fighters make up about 10% of people battling in China. They specialize in one-on-one duels and small skirmishes. Feared and often famous, the best fighters deliver lightning-fast strikes before many of their opponents can even react. Fighters get additional damage bonuses from a high aggression score and additional initiative bonuses from a high speed score. So while aggression is most characters' way to control initiative and be faster than their opponents, fighters use aggression and speed for part of their initiative. Fighters also use their aggression on top of their power to get bonus damage during attacks. If you're going into a one-on-one fight against a fighter, be afraid. If you've been challenged to a duel by a fighter and you're not one, you should seriously consider not accepting that duel. Unless you happen to be a very high-level warrior who can soak a lot of damage while occasionally clubbing that fighter to hopefully get him down before the fight goes on too long. They are tough to deal with one-on-one or in a small skirmish. I'll give you some examples of some of these classes too, some characters that are the famous people within those classes. I have a lot of characters built for people that you may run into during a campaign. Strategists is the next class. A strategist is the brain of an army. They specialize in learning, using powerful tactics that can help change a battle in an instant. They are learned scholars, smart tacticians, and they have uncanny abilities to reason out solutions to problems. Strategists receive a bonus to use of intelligence tactics in war based on their intelligence ability, and they also have the ability to thwart their opponent's tactics with a high wisdom score. So he gets a bonus to certain tactics during a pitched battle for using certain tactics based on his intelligence. And his wisdom, his ability to recognize situations and the street smarts to know what to do about it, make his wisdom give him the ability to figure out his opponent's tactics and try to figure out how to counter them. Then there's the advisor. Advisors are to politics what the strategists, what strategists are to battlefields. They specialize in political intrigue, verbal chess matches, and managing the affairs of cities, districts, and regions. They're wily, tactful, and can be the most mannered or the most crude people in the world, depending on how they want you to perceive them. Advisors receive a bonus to their ability to give advice based on intelligence, and they get a bonus to recruit soldiers and officers based on their charisma score. Because they are the ones behind the scenes, pulling strings to get things done, they're often put in charge of cities or regions, and so their ability to attract and recruit new people is very important. The last class of the starting classes you can be is the wily monk. Monks are the bringers of holy causes. They specialize in fighting with reckless abandon and being wise to the natures of people and the world around them. They make up for a limited armor and weapon use with a mountain of grit and determination. They receive a bonus to their ability to save against all sorts of toxins, mental pressure, and even physical stress with a high willpower score. A monk with a high willpower score is extremely tough and durable. And they get a bonus to rallying their allies to a cause or at least against something with a very high wisdom score. So with each of these classes comes a specific set of benefits and penalties. And then there are bonuses, of course, that happen. Now later in the game, once you've become well known or at least become very experienced in different aspects of the world, it is possible that you get promoted to a different class, or give yourself a promotion depending on exactly what type of scenario you're playing. And you can go from being a warrior to being a general. You can go from being a strategist to a tactician. You could become a grand marshal, whether you're a general or whether you're a warrior or a strategist. You can become a governor from any class, depending on the skills and abilities that you have exhibited during your time. You could be appointed a governor by someone, or a viceroy, which is someone who is over a collection of governors. And of course, a monk, if he finds a cause that he is 100% behind, a monk could also become a zealot. And then as part of your character building, some of your character points that you rolled for at the beginning, part of that up to 100 or so points that you build your character with, can be spent on skills. Now, skills only affect one particular thing. Skills are specific. Some of those examples could be like an armorer. If you want your character to be able to create and or repair his own armor, you could take skill in armorer. Or blacksmith, weaponsmithing, cobbling, where you could make your own shoes, swimming, focus, advice, which would be a particular skill for giving advice to someone who asks for it or who you're in charge of giving advice to. So if you're an advisor or a governor, for instance, to someone who is above you, any points you have in the advice skill would help you give better advice. Recruiting, which would be, talking to other generals to try and get them to come join your force, or talking to soldiers in mass to recruit more soldiers for your army in a city. Then there are tactics and thwart and debate and slander. These are just examples. Any skills that you come up with, of course, need to be run through the person running your game master. Those are good examples to start with. And then there are a few advantages and disadvantages in the book that are good examples also. Large is one. It means that you're bigger than most people, and it gives you a little bit of an intimidation ability, as well as some toughness that's added to your character. Ambidextrous, so that you have no offhand. That's an advantage. Heavy-handed means you do additional damage when you're unarmed. That's a small advantage you could pay for with your character. Intractable means that you're impossible to sway. You don't let other people change your mind. When you get your mind set on something, you generally stay the course, so on and so forth. And of course, I have a few examples of disadvantages. One is small. You have a few less hit points and don't do quite as much damage as other people who are bigger than you. Forgettable, which means it's hard for you to get promoted in other people's armies because you just don't stand out very well. Something about you makes you less than memorable. Weak-willed, which is the opposite of intractable. You're easy to sway, so on and so forth. You can obviously come up with just like the skills, you come up with any more on your own. And as long as your game master approves and y'all agree to the amount of points that it either costs you or gives you, depending on whether it's an advantage or disadvantage, it's the sky's the limit on those. Starting hit points, warriors and fighters typically start with 25. Strategists and monks start with 18. Advisors, because they're not really made for combat, they haven't worked their bodies into shape like the other characters could have. They only start with 13. And then, of course, you get a bonus to your hit points based on your willpower. So it's not like that's a dead amount that never changes. And then, then we get into martial arts. And this is where this game really begins to shine even more. I'm not even sure how many there are. Let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 different martial arts. And these are just the initial martial arts that your character could be practiced in before you even begin playing the game. And these 12 are a variety of different things. Some of them can be used by a character from any class. Some of them must be used by characters in very particular classes. For instance, Chituma right here is a martial art that can be taken by anyone, but it's usually taken by fighters because they value speed. And chituma is the art of swiftness. And so it teaches you speed, and you get very, very fast when you study chituma. And then there's, so that's just use that as an example of one that anyone can take that's based on speed. But there's also, I'm finding the other speed one, because the other one that's based on speed is solely used by fighters, if I can find it. I may have passed it. There it is. Shan Khan is the other one. It is a fighter-only martial art involving speed. So if you're a fighter and you want to be as fast as possible, you can take chituma or you can take Shan Khan. But if you're a different class and your primary concern is to be physically fast, the only one you're allowed to take is chituma. So there are options. The martial arts affect, of course, how you handle situations. You get special moves through your martial arts. The martial arts also affect how you grow in certain abilities as well as those special moves. So I'm going to skip through those. There's a whole bunch of martial arts to choose from. And of course, you can help design your own with the Game Master's approval, of course. But you can use the ones that I provide, the 12 that I provide, as a basis to see exactly which way to go if you do something like that. And then once you have determined your martial art, there is a chart in here somewhere. I may not be able to find it right this second. That shows you exactly what that martial art does for you. In other words, what kind of bonuses it provides you. There are certain attributes that each martial art specializes in, and it allows you, once you start gaining experience as a character, you begin to go up for free in those particular attributes. You're also allowed to spend your experience points, which is how you go up in this game. Also, you spend experience points to go up in attributes and skills as well. And those, your martial arts promotions, if you will, every so often in whatever attribute they specialize in, once you get to a certain point in that attribute, I think the lowest ones are generally at 40. Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's 40. Yeah, at 40. So in Chituma, for instance, when you get to a speed of 40, you learn to build your speed from previous momentum, also called Flash. So it's a special move called Flash. You basically gain 2 armor class every round in a skirmish or a duel, up to a maximum of 10. So for the first 5 rounds of any skirmish or duel, your armor class is going up by 2 points every round until it gets to 10, and then it stops. You learn that once you get to a speed of 40. If you start the game at a speed of at 40 or above, then you've already learned how to do it, and you begin the game with that ability. Additionally, any skills that you may pick up as you go through the game, any special moves that your martial art teaches, if you didn't have those when your character started, then at some point during the game, once you qualify for them, you have to find one of your martial arts schools somewhere in the country and go there and learn it. So it's an opportunity too for your game master to possibly take you to a place where your party hasn't been before, and separate you from that party for a few days while you learn that technique, and provide some, good role-playing opportunities both for you and the rest of the party trying to accomplish things like that. The rulebook also talks about war and how war is resolved, gives you a sample battle and how that battle resolves. The war makes for... there's complexity involved in the war. It's not just surface level. And during a war, you have a chance at duels with opponents. You have a chance to do some other great things against opponents, some real opportunities to encounter opponents, develop a nemesis, lots of other things that you could do. And especially if you're in charge of a unit or an army during war, you actually can be the one who makes all the decisions and how that war gets played out. You may choose to charge with your unit one round, or use a wedge technique, or rally the troops, or just sally forth and join your opponent. Or you may choose to stand firm and let them come to you. All of these decisions weigh against your opponent's decisions and help determine which way the war is going to go. And so war is a complex beast in this game that you and the game master manage together based on decisions you make and the decisions that your opponents are making. And you trying to win a war is very difficult. It requires momentum. Every turn of a war, every, let's say, round of a war, after all decisions are made and they're weighed against each other and the dice are rolled to complete the round, once a winning side of that war is determined, that team now has momentum and gets a small bonus in the next round after all the results are determined, to see if they can continue moving forward toward a victory. Typically, wars are fought, the winner of a war is the team that has won, I believe it's 5 consecutive rounds. So if your opponent is beginning to gain momentum and has won 2 or 3 rounds in a row, it's time for some heroism for you or someone on your force to step forward and try to turn that momentum around and swing the battle in your army's favor. There's a lot of other information in here. I don't want to go through all of it. This page talks specifically about what you can do during war. There's more skills. There's more about war. There's just tons of information here. This one talks about traits and maximizing your traits. Death, cities. What's this? There's just, I've got the vast majority of this game made. Now the book is not quite finished. I do have 5 beginning scenarios already written up for a beginning troop, so that a game master, here's the second one, a game master and a group of players can start the game with some small local stories that will help them get into the groove, see how the world works, use their characters and their characters' abilities, and get accustomed to the way combat works and the way decision making works and how to roll the dice and everything else. So these beginning scenarios will be in the back of the book as kind of your kickstart to playing in the world of Huang and becoming familiar with the 3 kingdoms. Also, what would be in the back of the book will be all of these sample characters, plus, of course, many more. These are some of the famous people in China at the time. And the first one, the one here on top, is possibly the most famous of all the people in China at the time. And that's because if you've played any video games about the 3 Kingdoms era, which would include Total War 3 Kingdoms, it would include Dynasty Warriors, Dynasty Tactics, Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, and there's a slew more. There's tons of games about the 3 Kingdoms period of China. In pretty much all of them, you will have run across Lu Bu. He was considered to be worth 100,000 soldiers, the greatest warrior that ever lived, one of those kind of legendary characters. And if you'll notice here on Lu Bu's page, his aggression is a 108. He is disgustingly aggressive. He has 93 power, 94 speed to go with it. He is a terrifying individual to fight, and he's a fighter. So in a one-on-one or a small skirmish, he is not someone you want to be facing in that kind of situation at all. Now, if he's on your team, that's a different story. You should be feeling pretty good about it. This is Guan Yu. And Lu Bu is I told you that in every attribute, there's only one person that holds each level between 96 and 100 in that attribute. Lu Bu is the 100 in aggression. Guan Yu is the 100 in willpower, and he's actually a 108. That 8 is from a weapon that he carries called Black Dragon that gives him extra confidence. This world, by the way, this world is the real world, the historical China, ancient China, where mysticism is believed to involve a lot of things, and that they believe in magic, and they believe in dragons, and they believe in a lot of what we know to be mythological things. Your characters would believe as well, but the world has none of that in it. Now, that's a fine line to walk when you're playing a role-playing game. You have to imagine that your character has to believe in a lot of this philosophical mumbo-jumbo, and a lot of this things that we know to be mythological, even though you yourself know that none of it's real. And so to play that character can really get you into a different mindset and really put your brain into that world to know how your character might react to things. And in fact, in the first 5 stories that you play through as a group, you'll actually encounter some of that as well. Some things that you have to really consider. Man, is that real, or is that figment of someone's imagination? Is that an analogy, or is that how something really is? So there's a lot of speculation on that part. So Lu Bu is fantastic. Guan Yu is obviously fantastic. Then there's Zheng Fei, who's Guan Yu's sworn brother. Zheng Fei, Guan Yu, and Lu Bu are all fighters, and Zheng Fei is the world's 100 in power, and his weapon gives him an extra 5. Then there's Zhao Yun. He is the world's 96 in speed. He's a super special guy also, really good at everything. Ma Chao, he is the world's 99 in aggression, where Lu Bu was 100. Ma Chao is the 99. He's another terrifying guy that you seriously do not want to face in person if he's against you. Just a really dangerous opponent. And then there's tons and tons more of really special characters. Zheng Liao, Gan Ning, Jiang Wan, Gao Shun, Shu Sheng. I've got several special characters made. There's a whole lot more to make. In one of the 5 initial stories, I also have lined out Taishi Si. I'm saying these names because if you know anything about Three Kingdoms, you'll recognize several of these characters. If you don't recognize any of those names, then let me tell you this much. There are big personalities in the world of Huang, just like there were in this time period in ancient China. These guys, the reason that there's so much myth involved and so much analogy in the stories that we know about the Three Kingdoms era, and that some of these guys are so much bigger than life, is because some of the things that they did were absolutely amazing. And some of them, I'll give you an example. And this isn't even something that was done that was amazing. This is just a person that was amazing. There was a man who fought for Dong Zhuo. His nickname was the Coming Doom. His real name was Hua Xiong. And Hua Xiong, the Coming Doom, was believed by most when the novel by Luo Guanzhong was first rediscovered, mainly because of Hua Xiong, but also because of some of the other bigger than life stories that were in the novel. It was all believed to be fiction. The reason is because Hua Xiong is described as a 9+ foot tall giant. He was huge, terrifying guy. And it was impossible for man to conceive, for some reason, that there were people over 9 feet tall. But that's how Hua Xiong is described in the story. So after going years and years assuming that the story is fiction, at some point the imperial records in China were finally unsealed when the emperor was more of a, for a while he had already just been a figurehead, but when he was finally, for one reason or another, they finally opened the imperial vaults, and the history recorded therein actually confirmed Luo Guanzhong's accounts of the late Han, early Three Kingdoms period. The story of Hua Xiong being over 9 feet tall was confirmed by what by all measures is a very reputable source. The Chinese Imperial Vault historians were really good about only recording historic events. That's the kind of world that I built this game around for your characters to take part in. Bigger than regular life, even bigger than our memory of what came before us. And it's an exciting place to develop a character, to experience the world, and to become a part of it. So I really appreciate you checking out my video. This role-playing game, I do have a touch more work to do on it, some more writing that needs to be done to be finished, but that's not the hard part. You can see I've done a lot of the hard work already, just in the pages and pages and pages that I've got here, as well as the 5 initial stories I've written, the characters I've already built, the charts and graphs and everything else that help you play the game. What I need from you is a little bit of help. I need artwork on these games, and to do that, I need a little bit of money just to help pay an artist to make sure that this book would have gorgeous artwork that comes with it. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it needs to tie into the game and add to the story and add to the drama. So go and check out my Patreon page. See if there's a level there that you can afford to give me some support on. It starts at $5 a month. There's got to be something there that you can afford. And help me get this game finished and sent to a publisher and get printed so that you and your friends can take a trip through ancient China and become legendary heroes in your own right in a world that is absolutely itching for heroes. They need heroes to save the day in old China. So give it a look. I appreciate you coming and checking out the game and sitting down at the gaming table with me. You have no idea how much I appreciate you watching this video. So have a good one. Happy gaming, and we'll see you again soon at the gaming table. Thanks so much.